firing until he is out of ammunition. He makes a running dive at the rocky embankment on Hereford's southern edge and rolls down the slope, careening off rocks and over tree roots until finally coming to a stop. He spots a V-shaped depression hidden in thick vegetation with a stream running through it. He pulls himself into the stream and gathers brush and vines to hide his body, gripped with fear and exhaustion. On the western perimeter, Williams and Brame frantically fire their M16s on full automatic at the waves of NVA, as do Roeder and Mack. A few NVA fall dead, but most brave the wall of fire, overrunning the position and killing Williams and Brame before turning toward Roeder and Mack. Mack pops up to get a better shot when he takes a bullet to the head, crumbling back into the foxhole dead. Roeder fires his M79 until he's out of ammunition, then picks up Mack's M16 and continues firing until it too is empty. He throws 2 grenades at the charging enemy, forcing them to fall back, then jumps out of his fighting position and heads for Benton's foxhole. When he tumbles in, he finds Benton dead. He crawls out and, with bullets trailing his every step, races over to the foxhole of Brooks and Tamayo, but they are dead as well. The Western defense has crumbled. Figuring everyone else is dead, Roeder does what he is trained to do, escape and evade. He tears down the side of the hill into the elephant grass, followed by several enemy. With bullets zipping over his head, he runs deeper into the elephant grass as fast as he can until he's overcome by exhaustion and drops to the ground. When his gasping for air subsides, he realizes the enemy is no longer following him. He stays hidden, silently praying that he will be spared. Still in his hole, Speranza sees a figure running toward his position. He fires off a quick burst, somehow missing his target. "Don't shoot, for God's sake, it's me." Sam Caston screams as he drops into the foxhole. The reporter looks over at Kirby and yells, "We need to get the hell out of here." Kirby shouts back, "Where? We're surrounded." "Get 6 on the horn," Kirby tells Speranza. "Tell him to hurry or we're dead." Speranza screams into the headset, "Please hurry, we're being overrun." But Warren doesn't get the transmission as communication between Hereford and the company no longer exists. Speranza turns to the artillery frequency and repeats the message. The artillery RTO passes the call to Warren, who now pushes his company even more, ordering his men to double time up the hill, a murderous pace in the mud and tangled vines. By this time, the battalion executive officer, Major Cantrell, is circling above Hereford in his observation helicopter, and Colonel Beard is watching the battle from his command and control, Huey. The swarm of enemy they see below is so intermingled with the mortar position, neither officer can distinguish who's who. Rather than kill the defenders by mistake, Beard holds off on artillery requested by Kirby. Meanwhile, Kirby sees 4 enemy crawling towards his position less than 15 feet away and tosses 3 hand grenades as fast as he can, stopping their advance. Kirby now realizes Caston is right. Their only chance for survival is to get off the LZ. He cups his hands to bark the order when the badly wounded Taste suddenly drops into his foxhole. Kirby ties a dressing on Taste's bleeding throat and yells over the enemy fire, "We got to make a break for it. Call Artie on the hill." Speranza reaches the artillery net, shouting into the handset, "We're getting out of here. The place is covered with enemy. Just about everybody is dead." He is told artillery is on hold. With bullets kicking up dirt all around them, Kirby and Taste low crawl over to Speranza and Caston. "We'll go over the rim in the direction the company will be coming in," hollers Kirby. "Let's go." As Speranza struggles with his radio while he climbs out of the foxhole, Kirby screams, "Forget the radio, blow it." Speranza pulls the pin of a hand grenade and throws it in the foxhole with the radio. The 3 soldiers in Caston move quickly away from the blast, and a few steps later come across a wounded AV Spikes clutching his M79. Kirby and Speranza have their M16s but very little ammunition. Caston, who is also wounded, has a .357 Magnum that Kirby gave him. Taste is unarmed. The 5 wounded men now move toward the slope, descending into a deep ravine to the east. Kirby, Taste, Spikes, and Caston run, crawl, and roll into the elephant grass, while Speranza act as a rear guard before rolling down the hill to join them. As they reach a small ravine, they hear the enemy coming down from the LZ in hot pursuit. They lie down, figuring the Americans are hiding. The NVA began beating the grass. The first North Vietnamese to spot the Americans is shot in the face by Speranza. Kirby kills another standing nearby. Spikes fires his M79 into the group, killing 5. The other 2 crawl away wounded. Seconds later, another group of North Vietnamese spray the ground around the Americans. Speranza takes 3 bullets in his right leg, one smashing into his kneecap, severing the tendon. Another bullet rips through his left leg. "I'm hit," Speranza screams as he falls into a heap on the jungle floor. Kirby sprays the advancing enemy with the last of his ammunition, causing them to retreat. When he bends down to check on Speranza, a bullet smashes into his right arm. He's now losing blood from many wounds. Kirby eyes an NVA peeking over the grass and pulls out a rusty French flare gun he'd found on an old battlefield and fires, hitting him between the eyes. The soldier falls backwards, screaming in agony as his flesh burns away. In the meantime, Taste silently bleeds to death from his throat wounds. Hearing something behind him, Speranza spins around just as a bullet enters the back of his skull, travels through his jaw and X's out of his nose, tearing away the cartilage, teeth, tissue, and skin. Eyes filled with blood, Speranza goes down, badly wounded but somehow still alive. Possibly to regroup, the enemy stops firing. Kirby tells everyone to head farther down the ravine. Quietly, the 4 survivors crawl, then walk down the slope. With help from Kirby and Spike, Speranza manages to keep up. Feeling somewhat safe with a NVA about 100 yards behind, they move a little faster. Suddenly, spotting a small group of enemy coming up a trail to their flank, Speranza signals to get down. Caston does not see Speranza's warning and keeps going, running straight into a group of North Vietnamese coming from another direction. One of the NVA shoots Caston in the head, killing him. The enemy now opens fire to the grasses from 2 sides. Spikes takes several bullets in his chest. Kirby checks his pulse, but cannot find one. The North Vietnamese troops slowly wade through the grass toward Kirby and Speranza. Kirby's out of ammo. Speranza's rifle is jammed, but he has 2 grenades left, and he gives them to Kirby, who tosses them into the advancing enemy. Just then, friendly artillery rounds begin pounding LZ Hereford. The deafening explosions stop the enemy's advance. Kirby and Speranza take advantage of the situation and begin to move slowly back up the hill. But it's too much for Speranza. "Go without me," he gasps. "I can't move any further. I'm dying." "I'm not leaving you alone," says Kirby. "Go now," Speranza yells. "Save yourself. I've made peace with my lord. Just go." Kirby, believing Speranza will die for sure, reluctantly accedes to the RTO's demand and crawls away back towards Hereford. Speranza, although growing weaker from loss of blood, finds the will to take off a scabbard knife strapped to his leg by a leather thong. He places the knife around on the ground next to him, uses the raw hide as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding in his right leg. He then somehow manages to open his first aid kit, find a gauze bandage, and begins wrapping it around his head and eye. Before he can finish, however, he hears rustling of men coming toward him through the grass. He takes his knife into his hand and rolls over face down in the dirt. Playing dead, Speranza doesn't move a muscle as 3 or 4 NVA slowly approach. He smells their bodies and stale breath as they search him for anything of value. One man turns him over and roughly strips off his signet ring. Others take his wallet, cigarettes, and dog tags. Unable to stay motionless another second, he is about to jump up with his knife when he hears a helicopter rapidly descending. It sprays the ground with bullets, some so close they spatter dirt in his face. Screaming frantically, the NVA run for cover. Still afraid to move, Speranza continues to play dead, and seconds later he hears someone carefully moving toward him. He grips his knife a little tighter, and when he feels a hand grab his shoulder, he musters all the strength he has left and tries stabbing the man. But the large shadowy figure, bat-licked by the sun, drifting through the trees, quickly grabs Speranza's knife in hand, screaming, "Hey, it's me, Carlos Cruz." Charlie Company had made it back up the hill. The last of his energy drained, Speranza lays down his head and slips into unconsciousness. Kirby is halfway up the slope when friendly artillery ceases falling. Uncertain what it means, he keeps crawling. His many wounds are taking their toll, but he keeps going until he reaches the top of the hill where he sees Charlie Company troops everywhere. Unable to control his wounded body and frayed emotions, he slides to the ground. A medic gives him a shot of morphine and stops his bleeding. When the wounded Stuckey comes crawling into the LZ, another medic rushes over, lays him down, and treats his wounds. Speranza is carried up the hill in a stretcher made from ponchos, and shortly he, Kirby, and Stuckey are placed in a medevac helicopter and flown out. Passing the medevacs flying out, helicopters begin delivering reinforcements who pile out onto Hereford. A look of horror passes over their faces at the sight of so much death and destruction. One soldier throws up. Hearing the helicopters coming and going, Johnson, who got off the hill and evaded the enemy, slowly approaches the LZ, only to face the muzzle of an M16 held by PFC Morgan. He drops to the ground out of relief when he is recognized by Morgan. The last mortar platoon survivor to get back to the LZ is a dazed Roeder. Company platoon leader asked Rogan to identify the bodies, all of which had been stripped of personal effects and shot in the head. He is able to name a few before the weight of the massacre takes its toll. He cannot look at another dead friend. As he sits down, the afternoon monsoon rains begin pouring down out of the dark sky. Roeder shivers as the rain pelts his sobbing body. So much death in such a small place. So there's another view of this battle, and clearly, the difference is immense. The leadership issues, and there's a whole discussion to have about that. At what point, when you're being told to do something that doesn't make sense, at what point do you say, oh, we're not doing that? And this is leadership strategy and tactics, and they got the whole assessment of that. And it's not like I'm not saying leadership and strategy and tactics tells you the answer, but it gives you the options, and it's heavy options to weigh. And you could look at Warren and say, well, if it wasn't safe, I wouldn't do it. Okay, well then he fires you on the spot. He puts some young lieutenant in charge of the platoon, and you get thrown out in a helicopter and taken out. So what good did you do? Now, you could also say, hey, roger that. By the way, give me a fire team over here. Give me a gun. Give me a machine gunner. This is what we're doing. Once the boss leaves, you could do that. That's a good option. I like that option. You don't know what kind of relationship we have, because there's also, I guess we could say that it appears that the relationship isn't great. I guess we do know that much. But sometimes, if somebody is very convicted in the way that they're offering advice, it can be convincing. And this is something that I have to be careful of, because I know I can be convincing. I know I can be. And I have to be careful. In fact, that's one of probably the original reasons for me being such a listener, is I know that if I say, I think we should do this, a lot of people just go, yeah, roger that. Like, if that's what you think, we're on board. I mean, that's kind of something I had to watch out for. And it turned me into more of a listener, because I didn't want to subdue people's thoughts. I didn't want to tamper with their ideas. And I didn't want to override how they thought something should go. So we have to be careful of that as a leader, to make sure that we aren't just being so overbearing that people don't push back against us.
The three different versions, if you want to call them versions, just the three different perspectives of that, each one paints such a unique picture. And I wrote down on my notes again, everything that I write down are just the things that I'm thinking in real time. And it's really frustrating to sit here and listen to this, knowing the outcome and seeing all these pieces play out, knowing that this was a preventable, this is a leadership failure. It is a leadership failure at a lot of different levels. And this last one really paints a more clear picture of how this predicament